My name is Evelyn Ward, and I am 71 years old. People my age usually fear loneliness, illness, or fading memories, but none of those terrify me as much as what I experienced last Thursday morning. The day I buried my husband, Leonard, it was supposed to be the final goodbye. A quiet ceremony under an overcast sky. It's a kind where even the wind seems to mourn. Leonard's coffin rested before me-polished oak. Simple, just as he would have wanted. My hands trembled around the white rose I held, and every breath felt like it scraped my lungs. The pastor's voice blurred into background noise. I couldn't process anything except the dull throb of grief spreading behind my ribs. After 50 years of marriage, Todio bury half your soul. Beside me stood our daughters, Sophie and Marina, both dressed impeccably, both silent. Too silent. Not a single tear. Their expressions were too calm. Instead of grief, their faces looked prepared, as if they had rehearsed this moment. I tried to ignore the unease forming in my stomach. Then my phone buzzed. A text message. From an unknown number. Evelyn, don't be frightened. I'm alive. That body isn't mine. My breath caught. My heart stopped beating for 2 full seconds. Alive. The message couldn't be real. I looked around, panic rising in my throat. No one seemed to notice anything strange. Not even Sophie, who glanced at me with mild suspicion when she saw me trembling. I typed with shaking fingers. Who is this? The reply came instantly. I can't say. They're watching you. Don't trust the girls. A cold shiver shot down my spine. My daughters. My daughters who stood there side by side, watching Leonard's coffin being lowered into the earth. Why would someone send that? Why today? Why at this exact moment? A cruel prank? No. This felt too specific, too precise, too dangerous. I forced myself to breathe. One slow inhale. One slow exhale. But the weight in my chest only grew heavier. Memories flooded me, years of love with Leonard. The life we built together. The struggles we survived. His warm smile, his steady hands. The way he used to hum old jazz tunes while fixing the antique clocks in his workshop. He wasn't. It's a man who made enemies. He wasn't a man who left loose ends, so why? Why did everything around his death feel wrong? Even the accident that took him away had sounded strange to me. Sophie claimed the police had found him collapsed in his workshop. Marina insisted it was a stroke. They spoke as if rehearsing the lines of a play. And now this message. I slipped my phone back into my purse before anyone noticed. But my eyes kept drifting towards Sophie and Marina. Sophie stood rigid, hands clasped. Her gaze fixed on the coffin, but with an expression I couldn't decipher. Marina dabbed her eyes with a tissue, no tears, only the gesture. I had raised them with love, protected them, sacrificed everything for them. But today, for the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own children. When the ceremony ended, people offered condolences I'd barely heard. Everyone left one by one until only Sophie, Marina. And I remained beneath the gray sky. Mom, Sophie said softly, you should come stay with us for a while. You shouldn't be alone tonight. Her voice was gentle. Too gentle? Like velvet covering a knife. The text echoed in my mind. Don't trust the girls. My heartbeat quickened. I just want to go home, I whispered. Marina stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. We'll drive you, I forced a smile, even as dread curled inside me like smoke. No, please. I need a moment alone. They exchanged a glance, brief but sharp enough to cut. A glance that said more than words ever could as soon as they left. My phone buzzed again. You're in danger, Evelyn. And the truth about Leonard is buried deeper than his coffin. My legs went weak, because somewhere inside me, I already knew this wasn't grief. This was the beginning of something far darker. Asterisk. The wind grew colder as I remained alone in the cemetery, clutching the edge of Leonard's coffin with a trembling hand. The second message kept flashing in my mind like a warning siren. You're in danger, Evelyn. The truth about Leonard is buried deeper than his coffin. I couldn't breathe. I looked around, nothing but rows of headstones and a few wilted flowers swaying in the breeze. Whoever was sending these messages wasn't here, but they were watching me. Somehow they knew exactly when to reach out. My phone buzzed again. Go home. Don't let Sophie and Marina stay with you. Lock every door. A wave of nausea rolled through me. I didn't know this person. I didn't know if I could trust them, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't trust my daughters either. Not after the way they looked at me. Not after their emotionless faces at the funeral. Not after the way they rushed every decision about Leonard's death. I walked toward the cemetery gate, each step unsteady. My heart felt bruised, as if someone had clenched it in their fist. When I reached the main road, I saw Sophie's car, a sleek black sedan, parked a short distance away. She was sitting in the driver's seat, watching me. Marina was in the passenger seat, watching me. They hadn't left. A chill slid down my spine. I pretended not to notice them and walked past without a glance. Heading toward the taxi stand at the corner, my hands shook, but I kept my pace steady. I didn't want them to know I was afraid. As I reached the taxis, Sophie lowered her window. Mom, why didn't you call us? We told you we'd take you home. Her voice was warm, but her eyes were not. I'm fine, I replied. I called a taxi. Marina leaned forward. Why? We're right here. She said it like a challenge. Because someone told me not to trust you. Because I'm scared of you. Because I don't know what's real anymore. I forced a smile. Need some space. The sisters exchanged another unreadable glance, the same one from the funeral. Not grief. Not concern. Something colder. All right, Sophie said, pulling the car forward a few inches. But we'll check on you tonight. You shouldn't be alone. My heart hammered against my ribs. No, I said quickly. Please don't. I'll call you if I need anything. We insist, Marina added, her smile stiff. We'll stop by around 7. 7. The message echoed in my mind. Don't let Sophie and Marina stay with you. A taxi pulled up. I opened the door quickly. I'll see you tomorrow, I lied. They didn't reply. They simply drove off, slow and deliberate, as if waiting to see where my taxi would take me. Once I got home, the silence enveloped me. Leonard's shoes still sat neatly by the door. His workshop apron hung on the hook near the kitchen, stained with oil and memories. The grief slammed into me all at once. But it wasn't just grief now. It was fear wrapped in heartbreak. I locked the doors. Every single one. Then I went to the kitchen, pulled out Leonard's old journals, and sat at the table. He had kept notes on his clock repairs, clients, even his daily routines. If something had been strange before his death, it might be here. I flipped through pages filled with sketches of gears and handwriting I had loved for half a century. Nothing seemed unusual until I reached a page near the back. The entry was short, rushed, uneven S. An M came to the workshop today, both unusually tense. Asked about insurance again? Why do they keep insisting? Something feels wrong. Must talk to Evelyn soon. My blood turned to ice. S and M. Sophie and Marina. Suddenly, the text message didn't feel like madness or grief. It felt like confirmation. My husband had been afraid too. My phone buzzed again. Evelyn, they're coming tonight. You have a few hours. Check Leonard's workshop. The truth started there. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. If Leonard had sensed danger before he died, if my daughters were involved, then whatever I found in that workshop might tear my world apart. But I had to go. I had no choice. Clutching my coat, I stepped outside into the chilling wind, and as I walked toward the workshop, couldn't stop feeling someone was already watching me. The walk to Leonard's workshop felt longer than ever. Every step echoed through the quiet street, bouncing off the empty houses like whispers warning me to turn back. The wind pressed against my coat, cold and sharp. And I swear I heard footsteps behind me more than once. But each time I turned, there was nothing, just silence. A silence that felt watched. Leonard's workshop stood at the end of the gravel path behind our house. A small wooden building with a slanted roof, paint peeling around the corners, and windows dusted with years of sawdust and memories. He had spent half his life here, fixing clocks, watches, and antique pieces with a patience I had always admired. Now the sight of it made my stomach twist. At the door creaked as I pushed it open. The familiar scent of oil, varnish, and metal hung in the air. It felt like stepping inside a time capsule, everything exactly where Leonard left it. The old cuckoo clock still ticked on the wall. The lamp he always used flickered weakly. The workbench was scattered with gears and tiny screws. But something was off. The room felt staged, as if someone had been here very recently, tried too hard to make it look untouched. My phone vibrated before I even took a step inside. Look under the drawer in the workbench. There's something he hid from them. My throat tightened. Them. Sophie and Marina. I swallowed hard and made my way toward the workbench. My fingers trembled as I pulled the top drawer open. It was filled with the usual tools, pliers, screwdrivers, magnifying lenses. But I knew this drawer. I had organized it with him countless times. Something was different. The lining paper at the bottom had been lifted, then flattened again. The corners were slightly curled. My pulse spiked. I slid my fingers beneath the lining and felt something taped underneath. A metal USB drive. Cold, small, hidden. Leonard never used computers. He barely touched technology outside of his old flip phone. For him to hide something digitally meant it was serious. I pulled it out with shaky fingers. Before I could examine it further, I heard a sound behind me, a floorboard. A soft shift of weight. Someone was outside, peering through the dusty window. I saw a figure standing near the edge of the workshop yard. Tall, still, watching me. My breath froze. The shape didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there like a shadow carved out of the night. I stepped backward, gripping the USB tightly. Another message buzzed on my phone. Don't let them see you with the drive. Whoever is outside isn't alone. My lungs squeezed tight. The figure suddenly turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness between the trees. I forced myself to breathe slow. Controlled, then slipped the USB into my coat pocket. Whatever was on it, Leonard had wanted to protect me enough to hide it. I needed to see what was on the drive, but not here. Not now. I stepped out of the workshop cautiously, glancing around the yard. The air felt heavier, as if someone had just been standing beside me seconds earlier. The shadows looked thicker, closer. I hurried back toward the house, every instinct screaming that I was being followed. By the time I reached the porch, I turned so quickly my neck cracked. Nothing. Just darkness. Once inside, I locked the door and double-checked the windows. My fingers trembled uncontrollably. I couldn't wait until morning. I needed answers now. I turned on Leonard's old laptop, the one he never used, and plugged in the USB drive. The screen flickered. A single folder appeared. For Evelyn. In case anything happens to me. My breath caught. Somewhere behind me, a floorboard creaked. I wasn't alone. My phone buzzed again. They're already inside the house. Asterisk. It's the message on my phone. They're already inside the house. It felt like a trapdoor opening beneath my heart. For a moment I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't even blink. Every sound around me sharpened. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of Leonard's old mantel clock, the faint rustle of the curtains brushing against the window. But then I heard it. A soft thud, upstairs, followed by another. Slow, deliberate, meant to be heard. Someone was here. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle the scream building in my throat. My eyes darted to the staircase. The shadows pooled near the top like dark water. The laptop screen glowed behind me with the folder Leonard had left. For Evelyn, in case anything happens to me. I wanted to open it. I wanted answers. But I couldn't stay here another second. Clutching my phone, I slid the USB out of the laptop and stuffed it into my coat pocket. The footsteps upstairs paused, as if the intruder sensed movement. My heart slammed so violently I crouched instinctively, pressing myself behind the dining table. Another step. Closer to the stairway railing, I needed a way out. The front door was too far. Crossing the living room would expose me. The back door was closer, but it creaked loudly, and whoever was upstairs would hear it immediately. My phone vibrated again. I flinched before checking it. Don't go toward the stairs. Go to Leonard's old storage room. There's a hatch beneath the carpet. My breath hitched. The storage room was barely a few feet away, windowless, filled with boxes and tools Leonard never had time to sort. And I remembered the hatch, a leftover from the old cellar that had been sealed decades ago. If I could get down there, maybe I could wait until whoever was inside left. I tiptoed silently across the wooden floor, wincing with each faint creak. The footsteps upstairs shifted again this time, moving toward the hallway above me. I reached the storage room and slipped inside, closing the door with painstaking slowness to avoid a sound. Darkness swallowed the small space. Dust filled the air. The faint scent of old wood and metal wrapped around me like a memory of Leonard's workshop. I knelt quickly, pushing aside the boxes until I found the small square of faded carpet. My fingers shook as I peeled it back. The hatch was there. Old metal handle. Rusty frame, just as I remembered. Another thud from upstairs, louder now. They were coming down. Panic surged, but I forced the hatch open. The hinges groaned and I froze, teeth clenched. A pause. Silence from upstairs. Had they heard? I lowered myself into the darkness, pulling the hatch closed above me just as footsteps reached the top of the stairs. The world went black except for the faint glow of my phone screen in my trembling hand. Sweat trickled down my temples. The cellar smelled damp and cold. I could feel the uneven dirt floor beneath my shoes. A shadow passed under the crack of the hatch. Someone was in the storage room. My lungs seized. I covered my mouth again, trying to silence my uneven breaths. A second shadow joined the first. 2 people. My phone buzzed with another message. Stay absolutely silent. They're checking the rooms. They're looking for the USB drive. My hand shook violently. They wanted the drive. They knew Leonard hid something. Above me, the hatch handle jingled softly. They were trying to open it. My heart thrashed so hard I thought it might burst. But the old hatch was stiff and rusted. After 2 attempts, they gave up. Footsteps retreated toward the hallway. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, I heard the front door click open, then slam shut. I counted 30 breaths before pushing the hatch open again. My hands were numb, my knees stiff, but I crawled out into the dim room. The house was silent again, but not safe. Not anymore. I looked at the USB in my hand. Whatever was on it was worth breaking into my home for. I turned toward the laptop. This time I would see the truth. Don't miss the next part. Part 5 will reveal what's inside the folder and the first real clue about who broke into the house and why. The house felt colder than before, as if whoever had been inside left a piece of their presence lingering in the air. My hands were still trembling when I sat down in front of Leonard's laptop again. The USB drive seemed heavier now, metal, warmed by my palm, as though absorbing my fear. I plugged it in. The folder appeared instantly. For Evelyn, in case anything happens to me. Just seeing the words made my throat tighten. Leonard had written this for me. Not for the girls. Not for the police. Only for me. With a deep breath, I clicked it open. There were 3 files. A video recording, a scanned document, a note written in Leonard's handwriting. My fingers hovered over the note first. I opened it. The handwriting was shaky, rushed, nothing like his usual neat, steady style. Evelyn, if you're reading this, then I couldn't protect you in time. I've discovered something about the girls, something I wish I were wrong about. There's money missing. Signatures forged. Insurance documents rewritten. And someone has been threatening me to stay silent. I think Sophie and Marina are in danger too. Or involved. I can't tell yet. But someone close to them wants us gone, Evie. You need to be careful. If anything happens to me, show this to no one. Not even them. I love you. Leonard, my eyes blurred. A sob escaped before I could swallow it back. My hand covered my mouth as grief and terror collided inside me with violent force. Leonard had been frightened. He knew something was wrong. He'd been trying to protect me. I replayed his words in my mind. Someone close to them wants us gone. Who? A friend. A partner. A stranger manipulating both Sophie and Marina. Or had Leonard been mistaken? No, someone had broken into my house tonight. Someone searching for this exact USB. I wiped my tears and opened the scanned document. It was an insurance policy. Updated 2 months ago. The beneficiary name had been changed. Not to Sophie. Not to Marina. Not to me. To someone named Daniel Price. I froze. That name meant nothing to me. Why would Leonard's insurance be changed to a man we'd never heard of? And why had no one told me? Unless this wasn't Leonard who made the change? Unless it was forged? I zoomed in on the signature. My stomach dropped. It wasn't his handwriting. Not even close. I hurriedly clicked on the last file, the video. Leonard appeared on the screen, sitting right here in this workshop, the same lamp glowing behind him. He looked exhausted, pale, worried. Evelyn, he whispered, voice trembling. If you're watching this, something happened to me. My breath hitched. Tears flooded instantly. Hearing him speak felt like he had risen from the grave. I didn't want to scare you, but I think someone's been entering the workshop when I'm not here. Papers moved. Tools misplaced. And the girls. They keep asking about insurance, even though I told them everything was sorted. He sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead. I don't know if they're involved. Maybe someone is manipulating them. Maybe they're scared too. But I can't ignore the threats anymore. They want something from me, Evie. Something valuable. He leaned closer to the camera. If anything happens to me, check the safe behind the workshop's wall clock. I hid something important, their file with names and transactions. You'll understand everything once you read it. My breath stopped. The safe. Behind the wall clock. I didn't even know a safe existed. Leonard swallowed, eyes glistening. Be careful. Trust no one. Not until you know the whole truth. The screen went black. I sat frozen, hand covering my trembling lips. The room seemed to close in around me. Behind the workshop's wall clock, a file with names, transactions, threats, insurance fraud. A man named Daniel Price. A sudden knock at the front door made my whole body jolt. 3 slow knocks. Deliberate, heavy. My blood turned to ice. I didn't breathe. Didn't move. Just listened. Another knock. Louder this time. Then Sophie's voice. Mom, we need to talk. Open the door. The air left my lungs. They weren't supposed to come now. They said 7, and it was only 5:16. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. Don't miss the next part. Someone is at the door early. And the truth about why will push Evelyn into her most dangerous decision yet. Asterisk, Mom. Open the door. Sophie's voice seeped through the woodcom, controlled, too polished for someone who had just buried her father. I stood frozen in the center of the living room, the laptop still glowing behind me, the USB burning like a secret in my pocket. My breath was shallow, my heartbeat erratic, pulsing in my ears louder than her knocking. 5:16 p.m. They had said they'd come at 7. Why were they here early? Another knock firmer. Mom, please, we just want to check on you. I didn't believe that anymore. I stepped silently backward, careful not to let the old floorboards creak. My palms were damp as I gripped the phone, waiting for a message from my mysterious sender, whoever they were. Nothing. I edged toward the hallway, planning to retreat into the kitchen, maybe exit through the back door. But then Marina's voice drifted through the door, low and anxious. Mom, we know you're inside. Your car is in the driveway. Just let us in. Something about the way she said no made ice crawl down my spine. They weren't worried. They were checking, confirming. Were they the ones inside the house earlier? Footsteps suddenly shifted outside to Seth's pacing quietly. I imagined them standing on the porch, exchanging glances the same way they did at the funeral. The same look that had unsettled me. The same look Leonard had written about. I swallowed hard and didn't answer. "Mom," Sophie's voice hardened, barely noticeable unless you knew her well. "We don't want to force anything. But we have to come in force." I pressed myself against the wall, heart thundering. There was a scrape of metal outside, the unmistakable sound of keys. "Keys, do you have hers?" Marina whispered. "I do," Sophie replied. Panic slammed through me. They had a copy of my house keys. Of course, they did. They had insisted on one years ago in case Mom ever needs help. I never questioned it. I heard the keys slide into the lock. No, I raced toward the kitchen, running on instinct and terror. Behind me, the front door handle twisted. "Mom." Sophie called again, urgency sharpening her voice. "Just wait." I didn't. I bolted into the laundry room, kicking the door shut behind me. The old lock clicked into place, a flimsy barrier that wouldn't hold for long. Their voices grew louder as the front door opened. "They were inside, Mom. She must be here. Check the rooms. Need to find her before what?" My hands shook as I fumbled for the back door. The cold brass knob slipped under my sweaty palms. I pulled it open just as footsteps approached the hallway. I stepped into the backyard, closing the door as quietly as I could. The cold evening air slapped my face, and for a split second the breath stalled in my lungs. A motion sensor light flicked on above me, flooding the yard with harsh illumination. I winced. If they looked out the kitchen window, they would see me instantly. Desperate, I ducked behind the old shed, pressing myself against the wooden wall. My pulse pounded so loudly I was terrified they would hear it through the glass. A faint murmur floated from inside the house, muffled voices, then the unmistakable creak of doors being opened. They were searching. For me? For what I had found? For something far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. My phone buzzed. Finally, I pulled it out with shaking fingers. "Stay hidden. They aren't alone." My blood ran cold. I peeked around the shed, scanning the yard. At first I saw nothing. Just the shadows of trees swaying and the dim streetlights flickering on one by one. Then my eyes caught movement. A man stood near the side gate, tall, dark jacket, face obscured by shadows, watching the house, not moving, not speaking, just waiting. Another message came through instantly. "That's Daniel Price." I nearly dropped the phone. The name from the insurance document. The name Leonard warned me about. He wasn't a line on paper. He was here, on my property, and my daughters were inside with him. I covered my mouth, fighting the urge to cry out. I didn't know what their connection was. I didn't know who was controlling whom. But I knew one thing. If Leonard had been right, and this man wanted the same thing that got my husband killed, then I was standing one heartbeat away from danger. Couldn't outrun. Don't miss the next part. Evelyn finally faces the truth about Daniel's involvement and discovers what Sophie and Marina have been hiding. Asterisk. My breath clouded in the cold air as I pressed myself deeper against the shed's wall. Every instinct in my body screamed for me to run, but my legs felt stiff, frozen by fear. My eyes stayed locked on the tall man by the gate. It's the man whose name had been written on Leonard's insurance papers, Daniel Price. He didn't move, didn't shift his weight, didn't look around. He stood there as if he belonged on my property, as if he'd been here before. Inside the house, muffled footsteps echoed, Sophie and Marina continuing their search. Their silhouettes occasionally passed the kitchen window, shadows gliding across the curtains like phantoms. Were they working with him? Or were they victims too dragged into something they didn't understand? The uncertainty gnawed at me. Another message pinged on my phone. "Don't let him see you. Daniel is dangerous." My throat went dry. Dangerous. The word hammered in my skull. I slowly crouched until I was almost sitting on the cold ground, forcing myself to breathe quietly. A small branch cracked somewhere near the fence, and Daniel's head snapped toward the sound. My heart jumped into my throat. He didn't move toward the noise, but his posture stiffened. He was alert, like someone trained to detect small movements, someone familiar with surveillance, What was he to my daughters? What was he to Leonard? As I tried to calm my racing thoughts, the back door suddenly swung open. Light spilled across the porch. Sophie stepped out. I nearly stopped breathing. She hugged her arms against the cold, scanning the yard. "Mom," she called softly, "please, just talk to us." Her voice cracked. Not febrile, painful. My chest tightened. She sounded like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The girl who believed I could chase away any monster. But now? I wasn't sure if she had become one herself or if someone else was pulling her strings. Marina joined her on the porch. "Mom, if you're out here, please come inside. We're not trying to hurt you." Daniel stepped forward from the shadows. My blood iced. The girls didn't flinch. They didn't scream. They didn't act surprised. Marina simply asked, "Did you find anything?" "Found anything?" My breath hitched. Daniel responded in a low, confident voice. "No, she's hiding." "But she couldn't have gone far?" Sophie's expression hardened. "Keep looking." That was it. The confirmation I prayed I wouldn't hear. They were working together. The three of them split up. Sophie heading toward the left side of the yard. Marina toward the garden. And Daniel pacing directly toward the shed. Closer, closer, closer. His footsteps crushed the gravel. I curled into myself, silently begging the night to swallow me. The beam of a flashlight flicked on and swept across the lawn, growing brighter as it approached my hiding place. My heartbeat thudded so loudly I feared it would echo. Daniel stopped only a few feet away. His shadow stretched long and thin over the shed wall, hovering inches from my face. I could hear his breathing, steady, unhurried, confident. The kind of breathing that belonged to someone who assumed they had already won. The flashlight beam climbed the shed wall slowly. Slowly, slowly. Then my phone vibrated. I nearly screamed. The sound was small, muffled by my coat, but Daniel turned instantly. Senses snapping toward the noise, I clamped a hand over my mouth and curled deeper. Into the darkness, he stepped closer. Closer. The flashlight beam drifted down toward the base of the shed, inches from me. Then Sophie's voice cut through the yard. "Daniel, come inside. You need to see this." His footsteps paused. "What is it?" "It's about Dad," Sophie replied, her voice sharp with urgency. My blood chilled. Something about Dad. Daniel hesitated before turning away. "Don't move," he muttered, though I didn't know if he meant me or someone else entirely. He headed back toward the house. I stayed frozen until his shadow disappeared. Only then did I dare to breathe again. My phone screen lit up, showing the message I had nearly died for. "Evelyn, they found something inside. You need to see what it is before they destroy it." My pulse quickened. Whatever they discovered, it was connected to Leonard. And if they destroyed it, I might never learn the truth. I wiped my trembling hands on my coat, then slowly rose to my feet. I had to go back inside. But this time, I would enter the house knowing exactly who my enemies were. Don't miss the next part. Evelyn sees what Sophie, Marina, and Daniel discovered. And the truth is far more shocking than she ever imagined. The night seemed to tighten around me as I crept toward the back door again, each step slow and deliberate. The shed's shadows stretched long behind me, as if trying to pull me back into safety, but safety didn't exist anymore. Not with Sophie, Marina, and Daniel inside my home. Searching, plotting, or worse. My breath fogged in front of me as I reached the porch. A low murmur floated through the open kitchen window. I recognized the voices, my daughters. But there was something else mixed in, something off. I pressed myself against the wall and leaned just close enough to listen. "She wasn't supposed to find it," Sophie whispered sharply. "Find what?" Marina's tone was shaken. "I didn't think she would go to the workshop today. Not after the funeral. And Dad said he'd already handled everything." Handled everything. What did that mean? Daniel's voice cut through the tension, calm and chilling. "It doesn't matter how she found it. We know where the rest is. But we need to move quickly before she gets help, or before someone else intervenes." My fingers tightened around the edge of the wall. Help someone else. Was he talking about the person texting me? Sophie paced, her voice trembling now. I can't believe Dad left all this behind. He never told us anything, Rena spoke quietly. Maybe he didn't trust us. Silence fell. And then Daniel replied, It doesn't matter. What matters is that we get what was promised. Promised. Sophie slammed something down paper. Would a drawer? No, she snapped. What matters is that she doesn't ruin everything. My pulse quickened. That me? I inched closer and dared to peek through the gap in the curtains. The three of them were standing in the living room. Sophie held a Phylan old one-hand pages were spread across the coffee table. Marina stood rigid beside her, hands clenched. Daniel had his arms crossed, eyes cold and calculating. And there, on the couch, my breath caught painfully. Leonard's old leather notebook. The one he carried everywhere. The one he never let anyone touch. Sophie flipped through it aggressively. It's all here. The transactions. The contacts. The dates. Her voice broke. Why didn't Dad tell us? Daniel leaned closer. Maybe he planned to. Marina shook her head. No, he was scared. You saw the messages he sent me before he died. My whole world froze. Messages. Marina had been receiving messages. From whom? I pressed harder against the wall, trying to hear. I didn't think he'd... Marina's voice cracked. I thought he was just paranoid. You know how stressed he was? I never imagined. Daniel cut in. Harsh. Stop. Both of you. This isn't the time for guilt. We need to secure everything before she comes back. Sophie inhaled sharply. What if she already saw something? Daniel's jaw tightened. If she did, we'll deal with it. Deal with it? My stomach twisted. Marina paced nervously. But she's our mother, and if she ruins all of this, Daniel said coldly, then she becomes a liability. My breath hitched. Sophie didn't argue. Marina didn't protest. They stood there, silent, accepting. My own daughters. My chest ached so violently I pressed a hand over my heart. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could barely stand. My daughters had secrets. They had hidden things from me. They had worked with Daniel. They had talked with Leonard before he died. They had messages I never knew about. And whatever Leonard had discovered, it was big enough that Daniel was willing to threaten me for it. I forced myself to step away from the window. My legs moved without direction, guided only by desperation. I slipped off the porch and crept along the side of the house, heart pounding like it wanted to escape my chest. Once I reached the far end of the yard, my phone vibrated again. Evelyn, I know what they found. You need to get out of the house now. They're planning to take the notebook and the file to someone tonight. My fingers shook as I typed back. Who are they taking it to? The response came instantly. To the person who ordered Leonard's death. A cold wave crashed through me. I stared at the glow of the phone screen, unable to breathe. Then another message arrived. Short, urgent, run. They're coming outside. I turned. The back door swung open, and Sophie stepped out holding Leonard's notebook. Don't miss the next part. The confrontation at the backyard begins. And Evelyn finally learns what her daughters have truly been hiding. Sophie stepped onto the porch, Leonard's worn leather notebook dangling from her hand. The motion sensor light washed her face in pale gold, softening her features. But not enough to hide the fear, confusion, and something darker swirling in her eyes. Behind her, Marina slipped out as well, hugging her coat tightly as if she expected the night to bite. Daniel stayed in the doorway, body framed in shadows, watching them like a guard dog waiting for command. I pressed myself behind the peach tree at the far corner of the yard, my fingertips digging into the bark. I felt like a stranger trapped inside my own yard, forced to hide from the children I had raised, protected and loved my entire life. Sophie took a few steps down. Her eyes scanned the darkness hungrily. Mom, she called, voice shaky, please. Stop hiding. Stop hiding. My throat tightened. You're the ones hiding. I wanted to scream. You're the ones lying. "We're not here to hurt you," Marina added, but her voice quivered not from guilt, from fear. Fear of me. Or fear of Daniel. Sophie flipped Leonard's notebook open with trembling fingers. "Dad wrote everything down. Everything. And we didn't know, Mom. We didn't know any of this." Marina stepped closer, voice cracking. "We didn't know he was meeting those people. We didn't know Daniel was connected to them." Daniel stiffened. "Be careful what you say," he warned quietly. Marina flinched. My pulse pounded. So there was something they all knew except me. Sophie looked straight into the yard, her eyes searching the shadows. "Mom, Dad wasn't who we thought he was." The wind brushed past me, cold and sharp, carrying her words like a blade. "What are you doing?" Daniel hissed, stepping forward. "We don't have time for this." But Sophie ignored him. "He was working for someone," she continued louder. "Someone dangerous. Someone who threatened us if he didn't cooperate. Dangerous. Threatened us." My breath caught. Leonard, involved in danger. He never hurt anyone. He never even raised his voice. Marina wrung her hands. Dad owed money. A lot of money. And this, she lifted the notebook. "This is why they came after him." Daniel shot her a glare. "That's enough." "No," Sophie snapped, stepping away from him. "She deserves to know. She deserves to understand why Dad changed the insurance, why he was paranoid, why Daniel grabbed her arm hard. "Shut up," Sophie gasped. Something inside me snapped. A deep primal instinct awakened, the same instinct I had when my girls were toddlers. Afraid of thunderstorms, and I'd wrap them in my arms to protect them. Even now, even after everything. They were still my daughters, and Daniel had no right to touch them. I moved before I realized it, my shoes crunching against the frost-kissed grass. Sophie's head whipped around Mom. Her voice cracked with raw relief. Marina gasped, hands flying to her mouth. Daniel's eyes narrowed, calculating. I stepped out of the shadows, heart pounding, breath trembling. "Let her go." Daniel didn't. He tightened his grip. Sophie winced. "Let her go," I repeated, louder, my voice vibrating with a strength I didn't know I had. Daniel's lips curled into something like a smirk. "Mrs. Ward, this doesn't concern you anymore." "Everything about this concerns me," I said fiercely, stepping closer. "Leonard was my husband. Those girls are my children. And you," my voice cracked, "you are the stranger whose name is on my husband's insurance policy." Marina looked at me, eyes wide. "Mom, please, Daniel, cut in. He owed me that money. And when he couldn't pay, someone else stepped in to make sure the debt was collected." My stomach flipped. "Someone else? Who?" I whispered. Daniel's gaze hardened. "The same person who will come after all of you if you don't hand over the file." "The file," I echoed. Sophie swallowed. "Dad hid it, Mom. The one he mentioned in the notebook. We found the corner of the safe behind the workshop wall. Clock Daniel figured out where it was." Marina stepped forward, shaky. "We didn't know this would spiral like this. We just thought Dad needed help." Daniel's expression sharpened. "Enough stalling. Where's the rest of the data, Evelyn?" I stared at him. Matt, the threat in his eyes, the greed, the cold certainty. He wanted the USB. He wanted the evidence. And if Leonard had died protecting it, I pulled the USB from my coat pocket. Marina gasped. Sophie's eyes widened in horror. Daniel's entire body tensed. "Give it to me," he said. "No," I whispered. His face darkened. And for the first time, Sophie stepped between Usna, protecting him. Protecting me. "Daniel," she said, voice trembling. "If you touch her, I swear." But Daniel wasn't listening. He lunged. Don't miss the next part. The attack. The escape. And the moment Evelyn discovers the truth Leonard died for, Daniel lunged toward me with such force that for a split second, the air seemed to split around him, sharp, violent, determined. I stumbled backward, clutching the USB drive so tightly the metal edges cut into my palm. Sophie reacted first. "No." She screamed, shoving him with both hands. Daniel staggered. More surprised than hurt, and shot her a furious look. Get out of the way. But she didn't move. Instead, she planted herself between us like a wall, her breath shaking, her eyes wide with fear and something fiercer. Don't touch her, Sophie warned. Marina was frozen, torn between terror and disbelief. Her hands hovered in the air as if unsure whether to pull Sophie back or help her hold her ground. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, frustration crackling through him like static. You don't understand, none of you understand what's at stake. Then explain it. Sophie cried. Tell us why Dad had to die. Tell us why you're here. Marina flinched at the word die. Daniel's face twisted with something like guilt. But only for a heartbeat. Then it was gone. He didn't listen. Daniel snapped. He thought he could back out after taking the money. He thought he could hide things from the people who funded him. Funded. My heart stilled. Funded him for. What? Sophie shook her head. What money? Dad never. Yes, he did. Daniel cut her off. He took advance as payment. He agreed to work for them, and when the deadline came, he panicked. He tried to run, tried to hide the files, and that made it worse. Worse. My stomach nodded. Marina whispered. So you're saying, Dad? Owed a debt. Daniel nodded. A massive one. But you said you were the beneficiary on the insurance? I said, my voice trembling. You said he owed you. I was the collector, Daniel replied, eyes cold. I was assigned the case. But the people behind him, they're the ones you should fear. The people behind him, the ones Leonard had mentioned in the video. The ones who had threatened him. The ones my mysterious texter warned me about. Dad didn't want us involved, Sophie said softly. That's why he didn't tell us. He should have, Daniel shot back. Because now you're all in danger. A branch snapped behind us. All three of my heads jerked toward the sound. Shadows shifted along the fence. Quick, silent, deliberate. My phone buzzed in my pocket. My shaking fingers pulled it out. They're here. Run. My blood iced. I didn't need a name to know who they were. Sophie grabbed my arm. Mom, we need to go now. Marina rushed toward the gate leading to the street. This way. But Daniel stepped in front of it, blocking it with his body. No, he said firmly. The street is the first place they'll look. Then where? Sophie demanded. Daniel turned toward the back of the property. Through the workshop. There's a path behind it that leads to the old neighbor's abandoned yard. If we move now, we can get ahead of a sharp whistle cut through the air. Everyone froze. Daniel's eyes widened. They're closer than I thought. Another shadow slipped between the trees. Then another. My heart hammered against. My ribs so violently it hurt. Marina's voice cracked. Daniel, what do they want? He looked at me, not at the girls. Not at the yard. At me? The drive, he said quietly. The one she's holding? Leonard hid more than insurance files. He kept evidence, transactions, names, codes, things that could expose all of them. Sophie stared at the USB clutched in my hand. Dad tried to protect you, she whispered. That's why he didn't tell us. That's why he hid everything. Daniel grabbed Sophie's arm again. Move. Now, if we don't get out, a figure stepped out from behind the fence, then another, both wearing dark coats, moving in perfect silence. My breath stopped. Daniel cursed under his breath. They found us. Sophie grabbed my hand. Marina grabbed my sleeve. Mom, Sophie whispered, run. Daniel shoved open the workshop door behind us. Go. We sprinted. Grass tore under our feet. Cold air slashed across my face. Shadows chased behind us, footsteps quickening. Sophie pulled me through the workshop door. Marina slammed it shut. Daniel shoved a metal bar through the handles. The pounding began. Immediately. Hard, sudden, relentless. Dust fell from the shelves. Daniel spun toward me, panic in his eyes. Give me the drive. It's the only leverage we have. I backed away instinctively. He stepped closer. Evelyn, now. But another message buzzed on my phone. A single sentence. Don't give it to him. He's lying. I looked up at Daniel. And in that moment, I realized I didn't know who to trust. Not him, not the girls, not the shadows outside, not even the voice on my phone. The world was closing in from every direction, and one wrong choice would decide if any of us survived the night. Don't miss the next part. The truth behind Daniel's lies is finally exposed, and Evelyn must decide who to trust when the attackers break through. The pounding on the workshop door shook the walls, each hit sending vibrations through the floorboards beneath my feet. Dust drifted from the ceiling, swirling in the dim light like frightened moths. Sophie pulled me toward the far side of the room while Marina braced herself against a shelf that rattled with every blow. Daniel paced in a tight circle, running his hands through his hair, muttering under his breath. "We don't have time. We don't have time." His panic alarmed me not because he was afraid, but because it felt unfamiliar. Daniel had been cold, steady, calculating. But now his composure was cracking. Something was happening that even he didn't expect. The pounding grew louder. Then a voice calm, deep, chilling called from outside. "Daniel, hand it over. Don't make this worse." My blood froze. The man's tone wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was final. Daniel's face drained of color. Sophie gasped. "Who is that?" Daniel didn't answer. Marina stepped away from the shelf, trembling. "Daniel, tell us. Who is he?" He didn't look at her. He stared at me instead. "Evelyn, give me the drive. If they get it, we're dead." But my phone buzzed again. Don't trust him. Daniel isn't who he says he is. My breath caught. The walls seemed to press closer. "Tell them," I whispered. "Tell them who you really are." He inhaled sharply. "I'm the one trying to keep you alive." "Then explain." Sophie shouted, stepping forward. "No more secrets. Not one more lie." Outside, another slam hit the workshop door so hard the wood cracked. We all flinched. Daniel exhaled shakily. "All right," he said. "You want the truth? Fine." He gestured toward the workbench. "Your father wasn't just repairing clocks. He was smuggling digital codes inside them, data packets, encryption keys, access keys. Things worth millions. Things the people upstairs wanted. Needed." I stared at him, stunned. "Leonard. My Leonard. He wouldn't." Daniel cut me off. "He didn't start by choice. He owed money. Medical bills. Business debt. A series of bad investments. Someone approached him with a way out. At first it was small, harmless. Then it escalated." Sophie covered her mouth. "He didn't tell us any of it. He didn't want you involved," Daniel replied. "He tried to protect you. He tried to get out. But the people controlling him don't let anyone walk away." My heart twisted painfully. Leonard had been drowning, and I never saw it. I thought his late nights were just work. I thought the stress was from bills. I'd never imagined. "This and you," I whispered. "Where do you fit in?" Daniel hesitated. Then the truth spilled out. I was assigned to watch him. At first, just to make sure he delivered. But then he started hiding things like this drive. He pointed at the USB still clenched in my fist. "So they sent people after him. And after you?" "You said you were collecting his debt?" Marina said, voice shaking. "You made it sound like it was personal." "It was easier that way," Daniel admitted. "You wouldn't have trusted the truth." Another hit slammed into the door, this one splitting the wood. A jagged crack tore through the center, letting in a sliver of cold outdoor air. Sophie screamed. Marina stumbled backward. A deep male voice outside ordered, "Break it." The door shuttered again. Daniel turned to me. "Evelyn, the drive, give it to me or we're all dead." But my phone vibrated again. I looked down. He's lying. He's the reason Leonard died. My heart lurched. Daniel froze when he saw the message flash on my screen. His eyes widened not in anger, but in recognition, as if he knew exactly who had sent it. "Who are you talking to?" he demanded, stepping toward me. "Let me see the phone." I backed away, pulse wild. "No, Evelyn," he growled. "Hand me the phone and the drive." No." Sophie shouted, pushing in front of me. You've lied enough. Daniel tried to shove past her, but Marina grabbed his arm, panic fueling her strength. Stop. Tell us who killed Dad. He snapped. Fine. Daniel roared. It was the door burst open. A masked man lunged inside. Daniel spun too late. A blow knocked him to the ground. The girls screamed. 4 figures rushed into the workshop, shadows with faces hidden behind black fabric. The tallest one stepped forward, pointing directly at me. Evelyn Ward, give us the drive. My legs trembled. Sophie clung to me. Marina sobbed. Daniel groaned on the floor. And I understood something. This was no longer about debt, or stolen data, or secrets. This was survival. Don't miss the next part. The masked intruders confront Evelyn. And a shocking truth about Leonard's final days finally comes to light. Asterisk, the tallest masked man stepped toward me. Each of his footsteps measured heavy, final. He didn't look at Sophie or Marina. He didn't care about Daniel, who was struggling to lift himself off the floor. His focus was on me and the small metal drive still clutched in my shaking hand. Evelyn Ward, he repeated, voice chillingly calm. Give us the drive. My breath hitched. Sophie pressed herself against my side, trembling. Marina grabbed my sleeve with trembling fingers. Stay away from her. Sophie shouted, but her voice cracked with fear. The masked man ignored her. From the corner of the room, Daniel forced himself up onto his knees, coughing. Don't give it to them, he rasped. If they get it, they'll kill all of us. They can't leave witnesses. The masked man didn't even glance his way. Instead, he reached into his coat hand, pulled out a gun. Sophie gasped. Marina choked on a sob. Daniel froze. My pulse hammered in my throat so hard the workshop spun. Evelyn, the man said, lifting the weapon, put the drive on the table. His tone was polite, almost gentle, as if he were asking me to hand over a cup of sugar instead of the key to my husband's death. My hand lifted involuntarily. Fear took over everything. I felt like I was floating outside my body, watching myself move. But then another vibration. My phone buzzed. I glanced down. A message lit the screen. Don't hand it over. Look at the smallest masked man. The one on the left. I hesitated. The masked man noticed. Now he commanded. But for the first time, I looked past him toward the 3 other intruders. One stood near the broken door. One hovered by the shelves. And the smallest of the group, though, one on the far left, shifted nervously, hand shaking on whatever tool he held. A young voice, barely mid-20s, muttered, We shouldn't be doing this. The tallest man snapped, Stay quiet. But I lifted my chin, heart pounding. Who are you? I asked the smallest one. He stiffened. The tallest man stepped toward me. The drive, he warned. Now, but I didn't look at him. I couldn't. The smallest man, the one my unknown messenger pointed out, was trembling. Take off your mask, I whispered. His eyes widened behind the cloth. No, take it off, I repeated. Daniel cursed under his breath. Evelyn, what are you doing? The smallest intruder shook his head violently. I can't. They'll take it off. Sophie snapped, stepping forward with a courage that surprised even me. The room froze. The intruder's breathing quickened. His gloved hands trembled. Then he ripped off the mask. Marina screamed. My heart lurched into my throat. It was Ethan, Marina's boyfriend. The young man who had dinner at my table 2 nights before Leonard died. The one who always smiled shyly, who offered to help carry groceries. No, Marina whispered, her knees buckling. Ethan. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. Pain twisted his face. I didn't want to do this, he choked. They forced me. I didn't know they'd come for all of you. I thought we were only getting the files. Shut up. The tallest man roared, lunging at him. Daniel rushed forward to intervene, grabbing the tall man's arm before he could strike Ethan. Chaos erupted. Marina ran to Ethan. Why? Why are you with them? Ethan shook, tears filling his eyes. Your father. He tried to help me. He tried to get me out of this. But then they blamed him when things went wrong. The room spun. My knees weakened. Leonard had been helping Ethan. The tallest masked man shoved Daniel away, lifted the gun again, and aimed it directly at me. "Enough," he snarled. "Give me the drive, Evelyn, or I'll—" A crash interrupted him. The bullet shattered the workbench lamp, plunging half the workshop into darkness. Sophie screamed. Marina grabbed my arm. Ethan lunged in front of us, trying to shield Marina. Gunshots thundered again. But through the chaos, through the screams, the collapsing shelves, the flying dust, my phone buzzed one last time. A final message glowing on the cracked screen. "I'm outside. Get ready to run. I'm the only one Leonard trusted." Don't miss the next part. The mysterious messenger finally reveals themselves. And the chaos inside the workshop explodes into a chase for survival. Gunshots ripped through the workshop, tearing splinters from the wooden beams and filling the air with dust and smoke. The acrid scent of gunpowder stung my nose as the lamp crashed to the floor, sparks hissing against scattered tools. Marina screamed. Sophie yanked me down behind the overturned workbench. Ethan sprawled across the floor nearby, his arm bleeding, but his voice urgent. "Run." He gasped. "They won't stop, go." The masked men shouted orders at each other, stumbling through the darkness. The tallest one barked, "Find the drive." "Find them all." Daniel crawled toward us, clutching his ribs, face pale with pain. "We can't stay hidden," he hissed. "They'll corner us. We need to move." "Move where?" The workshop door was broken. The windows were blocked by two masked men. The back wall was narrow and lined with heavy shelves. "We're trapped," Sophie whispered, fear trembling in her voice. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone at screen, cracked but still glowing. The message blinked again. "I'm outside. Get ready to run." I'm the only one Leonard trusted. The only one Leonard trusted. Who was this person? And why did they know so much? Another bullet smashed into the wall above our heads. Dust showered us. Sophie cried out and pulled me closer, shielding me with her arms. Daniel pointed toward the far right corner. "There's a crawl space behind that cabinet. Leonard used it for storing large clocks. It leads to the outer shed wall. If we can break through." A gunshot slammed into the cabinet he pointed at, knocking it sideways. The path was exposed. "We go now." Daniel shouted. Ethan grabbed Marina's hand. "I'll cover you, Zess, run." "No," Marina sobbed. "Ethan, please, go." He shouted, pushing her toward the cabinet. Sophie crawled forward, dragging me along. Daniel shoved the cabinet aside with a grunt, revealing a cramped wooden crawl space, barely large enough for a person to squeeze through. The masked men noticed. "They're escaping." The tallest man raised his gun. Ethan threw a wrench at him with everything. He had hit the man square in the temple. He staggered, a single second, but it was enough. Daniel shoved Sophie inside the crawl space. "Move! Move!" he yelled. Marina scrambled in next, sobbing uncontrollably. I crawled after them, the wooden floor scraping my palms. Daniel followed behind me, dragging the cabinet back to block part of the opening. But the masked men were already firing. Bullets tore into the wood behind us, splinters flying into my hair and face. Sophie screamed. Marina pushed forward frantically. Daniel grunted in pain as something hit him. Maybe a grazing shot, maybe worse. "Keep going." He groaned. The crawl space felt endless, claustrophobic, suffocating. I dragged myself forward until my fingers hit a cold metal panel. The outer wall. Sophie shoved it. It stuck. Daniel pushed past me. "Move," he gasped, wedging his shoulder under the panel. With a violent heave, he forced it open. Cold night air flooded in. We tumbled out behind the workshop into the backyard. Darkness. The moment I stood upright. A hand grabbed my wrist. I screamed, but a familiar voice whispered urgently, "Evelyn, it's me. Don't be afraid." Figure pulled me into the shadows. My heart thundered as my eyes adjusted. It was Mr. Rowan, our next-door neighbor. The quiet, soft-spoken man who'd lived beside us for 20 years. The man who brought pies during holidays. The man Leonard trusted enough to share tools with, his face was tight, serious, nothing like the gentle neighbor I knew. Leonard told me everything, he whispered. I've been trying to protect you since the day he came to me. Sophie and Marina froze. Daniel looked stunned. You? Daniel breathed. You were the one sending messages. Mr. Rowan nodded once. And now we need to move. They're coming around the side. Footsteps thundered from inside the workshop. The masked men had found the crawl space. Everyone, stay close, Mr. Rowan ordered. There's a tunnel under my shed that leads to the old storm cellar. Leonard and I built it years ago. It's the only safe place left. We don't even know if we can trust you. Daniel spat. Mr. Rowan glared at him. I'm the reason you're still alive. He turned to me. You have something they want. Something Leonard died protecting. If they get it, it's over. I clutched the USB against my chest. Behind us, the masked men burst out of the workshop. We ran into the shadows. Toward the shed. Toward whatever truth waited in that hidden tunnel. Don't miss the next part. The storm cellar reveals the final secrets Leonard hid. And the real mastermind steps out of the shadows. Mr. Rowan led us across the backyards in near total darkness. His flashlight switched off, relying only on memory and instinct. Sophie and Marina stayed close to me, gripping my sleeves as if afraid I'd disappear into the shadows. Daniel stumbled behind us, still clutching his injured side. Breathing heavily behind us, the masked men shouted to each other, their voices echoing through the cold night. They went this way. Find the old man. Get the drive at all costs. My heart hammered so violently it felt like each beat shook the ground beneath my feet. Mr. Rowan reached his shed first. He pushed open the door, revealing gardening tools, broken pots and a hatch hidden beneath a tarp. He pulled the tarp aside hurriedly. Hurry, he whispered. They'll be here any second. Without hesitation, he lifted the hatch. A cold draft spiraled upward. Wooden steps descended into pitch-blackness. Sophie lowered herself first, pulling Marina with her. Daniel followed, groaning as his injury dragged against the ladder. I went last. Mr. Rowan closed the hatch behind us, sealing us in darkness. Only then did he turn on a small lantern. The cellar was larger than I expected. Stone walls, a long wooden table, crates shoved along the sides, and an old safe embedded into the back wall. It felt ancient, untouched, as if time itself avoided this place. Sophie looked around. Dad built this. No, Mr. Rowan replied quietly. This was here long before any of us. Leonard just repurposed it. Why? Marina whispered. Mr. Rowan exhaled deeply. Because he needed a place to hide something. Something too dangerous to leave in the house. Daniel stepped forward, wincing. What exactly did he hide down here? Mr. Rowan pointed to the table. Put the drive there, Evelyn. I hesitated. The little device felt heavier than ever. It wasn't just metal, it was my husband's final act of protection. His last secret. His last message. Slowly, I placed the USB drive on the table. Mr. Rowan opened an old metal box on the shelf beside him. Inside it were several papers. Receipts, bank transfers, ledger scraps. A photograph of Leonard holding a set of keys in this very cellar. Sophie's breath trembled. Mom, Dad wasn't just scared. He was investigating them. Yes, Mr. Rowan replied. He didn't want to stay involved. He wanted out. But once he discovered what those people were truly doing, he couldn't just walk away. Marina rubbed her arms, shivering. What were they doing? Money laundering, Rowan said calmly. Digital fraud. And worse. Leonard was just the courier, but they forced him into a bigger role. Daniel swallowed hard. And then he tried to expose them. Mr. Rowan nodded. And that's when he came to me. He knew I had worked in law enforcement years ago. He trusted me. A lump formed in my throat. Leonard came to him, not me. He wanted to keep us safe. Sophie wiped tears from her cheeks. So they killed him. Rowan hesitated, then nodded. Yes, they staged everything to look like a natural death. Marina sobbed, burying her face in her hands before I could comfort her. The cellar ceiling thud, heavy footsteps. Then a voice, Evelyn. We know you're in there. Open up. My breath caught. The masked men had found us. Rowan grabbed the USB and shoved it into an old laptop on the table. Data filled the screen, names, bank accounts, transactions. Undeniable evidence. Leonard gathered everything, Rowan said. Enough to put them away forever. But only if we get this out. The hatch above shook. Dust rained down. They're breaking through, Daniel warned. We don't have time. Rowan typed rapidly, transferring everything to a secure server. Just a few more seconds, he muttered. The hatch cracked. A masked fist punched through the wood. Rowan, Sophie cried. He hit enter, sent. A breath of relief washed over Mian till the hatch burst. Open, 3 masked men dropped into the cellar. The leader aimed a gun at us, but Rowan stepped forward. You're too late, he said calmly. The man snarled. Give us the drive now. Rowan shook his head. It's already gone. A single shot echoed. Rowan collapsed. Screams filled the cellar. Sophie grabbed me. Marina fell to her knees. Daniel lunged at the shooter. Chaos. Blurred gunshots, shouts, footsteps, and then sirens. Dozens growing. Louder, closer. The masked men froze then. Fled up the broken hatch before the police stormed the property. Officers poured into the cellar, pulling us out one by one. Marina sobbed uncontrollably. Sophie held me so tightly I could barely breathe. Daniel was taken into custody alive, shaken but cooperating. And Rowan lay still. He had saved us. Saved the evidence. Saved Leonard's message. Saved the truth. Days later, when the arrests were made and the news broke, I sat alone on the porch with Leonard's notebook in my lap. I whispered, You protected us, even in death. Sophie and Marina sat beside me, holding my hands. The sun rose slowly, warm and gentle, a quiet reminder that endings can bring new beginnings. And for the first time since Leonard died, I finally felt safe. Sometimes life takes turns we never expect. Every person in this story carried their own pain, their own choices, and their own consequences. Maybe you saw yourself in one of them, or maybe it reminded you of someone you once knew. What do you think happened next? What would you have done if you were in their place? If you have any questions about what happened to the other characters, or if you want me to share more about them, just comment below. I read every message you leave, and your thoughts truly mean a lot to me. And if this story touched your heart, inspired you, or even made you think differently, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me keep sharing stories that move people, open minds. And remind us we're all human. At the end of the day, your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for watching, for feeling, and for being part of this journey. More powerful stories are coming soon. Stay tuned and stay kind.